Good afternoon. I really hadn't planned on doing yet another sharpening video. What I really wanted to do was quickly do a comparison video of the chisels I normally use. This set here is a set of Stanley Sweetheart chisels that I purchased. I was actually able to look this up. I purchased them on Amazon in 2013, and they cost, at the time, their cost was $59.89 or something like that. This set today is running for about $86 and change. Here I have, these are two Lee Nielsen chisels that I purchased in March and April of 2020. This was the first one I purchased, a 3/8, and the reason I purchased it because I didn't have a 3/8 chisel, and I really liked it, so I purchased a 1/2 inch. Now I do have a 1/2 inch Stanley already. Found these chisels to be excellent, and they're expensive. They're not cheap. They cost $55 each 2 years ago. Today they're selling for $95. So we're October now of 2022. So in 2 years and 5 months, they've nearly doubled in price. Where you can buy an entire set of these Stanley Sweethearts for the price of one Lee Nielsen socket chisel. I'm not really I don't really want to debate what is worth what. I'm not trying to make this about money, but obviously money is always a factor when you're buying tools. These chisels are probably the best chisels I've ever used, certainly the best chisels I've ever owned. And these Stanleys are good. They're very good. Compared to for instance, the other night I sharpened the Rant chisels, and I liked them. They're fine chisels. I like the Stanleys better. Now I like socket chisels better. Some people don't like them, or they prefer chisels with a full tang. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I don't like socket chisels because of the hand. I love the handles in socket chisels. I don't like them for any other reason than they're comfortable in my hand. These, in particular, these Lee Nielsen chisels, they have an excellent finish on them. The Stanley, the Stanleys are a little less refined, a little fatter. They don't have as nice a finish. I'm not exactly sure what finish Lee Nielsen uses on their handles. I'd have to look that up. But once again, these are fine, and I could obviously, if I wanted to, sand them down a little bit and apply some wax or whatever I like. But the point of this video, I just wanted to do a quick comparison because last night I sharpened these two chisels, and they using the same methods I did in the other sharpening videos. The one difference was, and here's something I didn't know until after owning this chisel for more than 2 years. When I initially purchased it, I received it, gave it a quick honing, and went to work with it. Lee Nielsen markets their chisels as being factory lapped, meaning the back is already pretty much guaranteed to be flat, and I found that to be true. However, last night when I sharpened this 3/8 chisel, I did flatten the back, so it took me about 5 minutes to sharpen the chisel because I polished the back up. You probably won't be able to see it. I'm using an iPhone camera and it's not great. Now, when I purchased this chisel, I did flatten the back immediately. I don't know why, I just did. But I'm going to, because I want the comparison to be fair, I'm going to sharpen this chisel as well with the same methods I used in the other sharpening videos. Now you can see this, I did a quick test on this. This chisel is actually pretty sharp already. Probably will shave hair, and it will. I don't know if you can, probably can't tell. But just to be fair, I'm going to sharpen it again and do a quick comparison to see how each chisel works. So So once again, as I said, I don't want this to be a sharpening video, but as it were, it's going to be. So index, lift slightly. The stone is really sucking up the water. Once again, I'm just trying to raise a bar. Use the whole stone. I prefer circular motions because I like to sharpen with one hand. I found that when you go back and forth, you can sort of lift the chisel so it's not riding on its bevel, or in my case, riding slightly above its bevel. And what happens is you can round it or get uneven sharpening. Now I have a bar. I've had this chisel for 9 years. It's been sharpened many times, so the back already has a really nice flat polish on it. Indexed it, lift slightly. Start circling. Even pressure. Using the entire water stone. One of the main reasons I really don't like honing guides is because I use water stones and they will leave a groove in your stone no matter what you do. I flatten my stones every time I use them, but if you do a sharpening session where you're sharpening 4 or 5 or 6 chisels in a row, no matter what you do, you're going to leave tracks, either minor or worse than minor. You got index, lift. Make sure I have an even pattern across what I do. Index, lift. These chisels sharpen fairly quickly. As I said, the setup took about 15 minutes per chisel, meaning flattening, raising the bar, removing the bar, flattening again. When I first set up a new chisel, I always raise 2 bars, even on both stones. I wouldn't just do it on one stone. I'm trying to get rid of all of the steel in front. It might not be all that great. In theory, it's not there, but doesn't hurt to get rid of it anyway. Should be almost there. I have a very minor bar. See if I can get it a little higher. And there's a bar all the way across. Now I will dig out the strap. So before I don't usually count my strokes, maybe I can move this a little bit closer without knocking it over. Yeah, there's the socket. It's actually kind of cold in here. The high temperature today is only in the low 40s, which is cool this time of year for this area. So that's pretty sharp. I'm shaving here a little bit too much. And I have a piece of rough sawn cherry here. Trying to find a side that was even all the way across. And let's see how sharp this is. Here on there. I probably should have flattened this. But this is taking end grain shavings. Hard to see, but I'll try to I'll turn it. So we'll try the Lee Nielsen chisel. So the Lee Nielsen chisel in this case is, in my opinion, doing a much better job of taking these shavings. Not that this is bad. If you purchase this set of chisels and set them up and sharpened them, kept them sharp, I guarantee you that they'll last you probably the rest of your life. This chisel here, as I said, couple things, if we can see this. The grinding on this chisel is much better. This has, it's rough edges. When I got this, I sanded it with a 320 grit sandpaper and then 600 and steel wool. This I didn't have to do anything. The bevels on the side fit perfectly for a like a 1-6 dovetail guide or jig if you use that ratio, which I do for everything. I don't pay attention to the hardwood ratios to softwood ratios. The back was obviously much flatter. The socket, no burrs around the socket. This actually still has burrs around the socket because I never really bothered cleaning it up. Not that that's a big deal, but there is a level of refinement with this chisel that does not exist with this one. At that, is this chisel worth this entire set? I would probably say no, but if I could trade this entire set in for 2 more Lee Nielsen chisels, I would in a heartbeat. And nothing to do with money. I just like I just think the Lee Nielsen chisels are really just top of the line, as good as you're going to find. Some people argue up and down. That's really not the point. The point is I wanted to compare 2 chisels that were really, in essence, supposed to be identical. They're both based off of the same original 750 design. The 1/2 inch, they're both right around the same size. The Lee Nielsen is a little bit heavier, not a whole lot, but a touch, in a good way. But to me, it has, when I purchased this, it was working out of the box, and that might not sound important to some people, but the way I look at it, when you buy a tool that works out of the box, you know that it's well made. There's no secrets there. This chisel took around 15 to 20 minutes to really get up and running. I could have put 15 to 20 minutes into it, maybe more, depending on your skill level, and found that it's not really a great chisel. Now, in this case, it has turned out to be a good chisel. I've had them for 9 years. I use them all the time, and I have no complaints. But you can go buy it. Once again, not trying to make this about money, but you can go buy cheap chisels or cheap whatever, and you're taking a chance that it might not work. Just as I said, you don't need to buy sharpening stones that cost $200 each. I would say that if you're going to spend money on woodworking, spend it on tools, not jades, not equipment that you can get away with $30 stone rather than a $200 stone. A $200 stone might make your tools a little bit sharper. They're not going to make you a better woodworker. A really good chisel, really good tool of any kind, will in some small way improve what you do. Now, I have to say this because everybody says this. I don't get paid by Stanley, Lee Nielsen, anybody. I have a blog. I get no compensation from anybody for recommending any tools, books, whatever you want to sell. I'm not selling it. And if you're new to woodworking and you needed a set of chisels, I would not hesitate in recommending the Stanley set in the least. It's a fine set of tools. For $75 and about an hour of your time, in general, you can have a set of chisels that's going to last you pretty much the rest of your life. The only point I'm making is there are times when spending the extra money does yield results. And in this case, I have a philosophy when it comes to not just tools, but a lot of things. I've heard for the first couple years when I woodwork, I would read magazines and read the blogs, and it would be a guy with a literally $50,000 set of tools, and one breath advocating real high-end planes, chisels, you name it, and in the other breath say that you can go to a yard sale and buy a chisel for $1 and get it up and running and be good to go. My point there was, as a new woodworker who had never, everybody's used a chisel, everybody knows what a chisel is, but that when I used to do electrical work, I always had a couple chisels in my box. Just you had to notch out studs and joists, and that's just part of the job. Those chisels were sharp enough to do that, but a chisel sharp enough to do fine woodworking is another matter. And if you've never sharpened a chisel before, or more importantly, if you've never taken a chisel that looks like it came out of the Edmund Fitzgerald and turned it into a chisel that works, you have no idea what your end goal is. And you could watch videos and read books. Woodworking is a manual task. It's a task to feel. It means that you can't just read what sharp is and know how to sharpen something. You have to do it. And my point has always been, how in the world are you going to take a chisel that costs $2 and is covered in rust or needs a handle and expect to know what to aspire to? This chisel is, when you purchase this chisel, it already works. There's nothing you need to do to it. You could use it right out of the box. When you purchase a rust bucket chisel, you can do everything the book said and it still might not work. And the point being, if you're going to spend some money, get yourself one good chisel. Get yourself a decent plane. Use those to get a baseline to how a tool should work, and then you can go for the rust bucket, yard sale, back of garage sale type of items. But it's like cooking a steak. If you've never cooked a steak before, you might not know how to cook it. You could burn it and taste it. It might taste okay, and you might think that's how steak should taste. Same thing goes with tools. If you've never used a really good tool before, how in the world are you going to take an old tool and make it into a good tool? I'm sure some people can do it, but to me, your time is just as valuable as your money. So my own philosophy and my own advice would be, don't go out and buy 6 Lie-Nielsen chisels and spend $350. But do go out and get yourself a good chisel, just one. Do go out and get yourself a set of chisels like this Stanley set here, and use them before you decide to go the restoration route. Tool restoration can be very frustrating. I've been doing it for a long time. I'm not going to tell you I'm great at it, but I can generally take an old tool and make it work. That's taken years of practice. A new woodworker doesn't have years under his belt or her belt. A new woodworker can purchase a plane like this one here, which was in decent shape, but it needed to be flattened. More importantly, the iron needed to be completely reground. A new woodworker buying this tool and attempting to make it there smoother will be very frustrated very quickly. So once again, use your best judgment, but don't. I've been talking about costs for the past 3 videos, and I wanted to make a counterpoint to that and say that sometimes it is worth it to spend a little bit more money. Sometimes it is worth it to buy the tool that works right out of the box, because it can save you a lot of frustration, and it can actually teach you a lot. It can show you how a tool should look, should work, and worst comes to worst, you'll have a really good general idea of what your garage sale chisels, your garage sale plane, your garage sale saw should look like, feel like after you've restored it. Because I'll say it again, if you've never restored a tool, you're new to woodworking, and you think you're going to buy old tools and restore them, you're going to be in for a very, very rude awakening. It will not only will you generally end up spending just as much money as you would have if you just bought a few new tools and just got to work and started learning how to cut joinery and saw things accurately. You might not end up with tools that really work because you just don't know. You don't know yet. I've had this gripe for 10 years that most of the advice I see in this regard in magazines has been wrong. It's not correct. You really need some experience before you go out and start restoring tools and making them work as they should. You're never going to get old tools and turn them into a woodworking set by themselves. And that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not disagreeing with anybody. There's a lot of very good woodworkers, good guys that I've followed who are great at taking old tools and making them work fantastically, and they look great, and they do an excellent job. And by all means, aspire to that. But if this is really for brand new people, if you're brand new, you've never really used a chisel for woodworking, you never really used a plane or a saw. Here's another great example, not to go off on a tangent, but here a Stanley. This is a number 945 10-inch hand brace. You might think that this tool here is, we'll wipe the rust off and you're good to go. No, I've used these tools, and same thing. I bought them. I thought I knew what I was doing, and used them. Cracked the spring, broke the chuck. Not that I did anything necessarily wrong, but they were messed up from the get-go. I didn't know that at the time because I didn't know what I was looking at. I just figured, it's a simple tool. How can I go wrong? Now, in that case, it's a bad example because you're generally not going to find new hand braces on the market for the most part. But the point being, every old tool I've ever used needs work. And until I knew exactly what I was doing, I probably messed up as many old tools as I fixed. And that's not cheap, and it's not fun, and it takes time. Now, you can argue that I learned from my mistakes, which I did, but certain mistakes you don't need to make. And the first one is, until you know how a tool should work, how can you restore one? And my opinion is you can't. So my advice is get yourself one good tool or two good tools. Use those as an example, as a baseline, as something to aspire to. Learn how they work, learn how they should feel. Then attempt a few restorations. And I really think that you will have much better results doing that than going to a garage sale and expecting to fill your toolkit with, I like to call rust bucket tools, because most of the tools I find at garage sales are covered in rust. So I hope this helps, and don't mean to pontificate, but I feel pretty strongly about this. It's been a source of frustration for me for several years, and it sort of feels good to rant about it. So once again, I hope this helps, and you have a great night. Thanks.